Well, good afternoon and good evening, everybody from wherever you are in the world, whether you're in the US or you're in the UK or in South Africa or here in Australia where I am. Today, I have a fabulous guest on our show. So, Take Charge of Your Health Naturally has been a passion of mine, and it's the root cause or the root basis of the podcast. It's my pleasure to introduce Kerry Madgwick. She's based in the UK, as is my daughter, and she is a clinical nutritionist and a clinical hypnotherapist. Now, my goodness, what is all that? She's going to explain to you exactly what she does. She's also an award-winning author. Her book is entitled, If You Believe You Can Heal Yourself, You Can. So she's passionate about all things health related. What is very interesting about Kerry is she calls herself a neuroscience geek, so she'll tell you a little bit more about that. So what she does, she guides you to take control of your health and well-being. And what I love, she reminds you that you are the CEO of your body. As the CEO of a company takes control, well, we need to take control of our bodies. So welcome, Kerry, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Margie. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you having me on the show and giving me space to, as you say, all passionate about all things health. So it's always good, I think, to share those and to help people, get some tips and techniques on how they can start to take charge of their health.
Absolutely. So the thing that I find fascinating about you is the fact, how did you get to this point where you are so passionate and so focused on the area that you're in?
Oh, so long story, I guess, but I'll keep it as short and sweet as possible. I suppose, like most people, we get to do kind of I was listening to someone the other day, actually, who he said we do our we search and then our research, and then we become, passionate about what we do. So I think mine was growing up. I was very fortunate in that my family was always, we lived on a farm out in the middle of nowhere, and we always kind of, when health issues arose, it was always how we could deal with them, because you didn't have a doctor that you could go to because it was too far to go to, obviously, unless you had, broken bones. So my mum was always really good at that, at finding, I guess, natural ways of helping us when we had kind of like coughs and colds and those kinds of things. And so I think I obviously had that background, and then I ended up being really, really ill. And I was told by my doctor that I had to be on medication for the rest of my life, that I didn't have any choice. I had endometriosis and a spastic colon. And they said, we don't know what's caused it. We don't have any resolutions for you. You have to be on medication for the rest of your life. And I had a friend who was a pharmacist. I didn't feel comfortable taking medication, but when I spoke to her about the medication, she said, if I were you, I wouldn't take this. And so that for me was, okay, she's a medical professional. I'm not a medical professional. If this is the recommendation she's given me, I definitely need to find a different way to resolve this. So I guess that started me on the journey of finding how I could naturally heal myself. And that led me to finding out about, I found a professor at a university who I started to follow, and he was talking about all of my symptoms, and he was talking about gut health. And that's what led me down the path of how important gut health is, and that it's the basis of everything. And I guess coming from a farming background, it made sense to me that if your plants are not flourishing, you fix the soil. You don't chop the plants down, you fix the soil in order to heal the plants. And to me, that's where the gut health comes in. And then that gut brain connection of how important everything is that's connected, and when we talk about building your foundations, for me, those are your foundations of what you need to work on to make sure that everything else starts to work as it should.
That sounds fascinating. I've got a few questions for you so that our listeners can get a little bit more detail about where you're coming from. So my first question is, how does the gut play a role in health and resilience? And what are some of the key mechanisms by which gut health can influence an individual's emotional and psychological well-being?
Okay, so great question. I think everyone's heard that saying, we are what we eat. So I always take it further and say we are what we eat and what we absorb, because you can be eating the most nutrient dense diet on the planet, but if your gut is not working properly, we're not absorbing and assimilating those nutrients. So we need to take on board our food, we need to break it down, and we need to get those vitamins and minerals from our food into our bloodstream so it can be transported around the body. And so that's all done in our gut and with our microbiome. So it's something that I think 10 years ago when I was talking about the microbiome, people thought I was, I think, a little bit crazy, but it is becoming more mainstream now. And basically your microbiome, it's all the cells that live on you and in you. They're viruses and bacteria and protozoa. And I know that sounds scary, but they're to help us digest our food, to help create our hormones. So it has this whole, it is literally the foundation of our health. So when our gut is not functioning, our hormones are not working, and our hormones are our neurotransmitters. So we have 30 neurotransmitters. If you think of things like serotonin, which is, we know our feel-good, happy hormone, those things are not produced in balance in our gut. And then that affects our mood, and it affects how we feel and how we function. So for me, whenever I work with anyone, the gut is the first place that we start working because of that impact on our brain. And even to the point now, illnesses like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's that everyone always thought were brain related, they're actually looking to the gut now because they're finding specific bacteria that are either have a balance of 85% what we call good or helpful bacteria and about 15% harmful bacteria. And we do need that harmful bacteria because it helps to produce some of the vitamins and minerals. But when that is out of balance, then we start to see these challenges with our health, and they can be physical. So it can be your joints, your hormones. When it comes to thyroid health, it can start to affect your cognitive. So our focus, brain fog, I'm sure there's people out there who, some people don't understand brain fog, but some people, anyone who's experienced it understands it. And it's just that where you feel like you can't concentrate. And that happens because of our gut bacteria being imbalanced. So it's so crucial that we keep our gut health functioning and we look after those gut bugs. I always say you never dine alone, because you're not only feeding yourself, but you're feeding and keeping those gut bugs healthy. So it's because of all those neurotransmitters and our gut brain connection. So we have bidirectional communication, which happens from our gut to our brain. And actually 80% of our communication goes from our gut to our brain and only 20% the other way. So to me, that, just shows you how important the gut is in all of these situations, in all of our health. I've worked with clients ranging from anything from skin issues to Crohn's, colitis to ADHD. And once we start to resolve their gut health, all of their symptoms start to resolve. So it's key for me in everything that we do.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So moving on from there, how can addressing those exact gut health issues like gut inflammation or leaky gut, how can that enhance your overall healing and resilience?
Yeah, so, as I said, there's this intrinsic connection between our gut and our brain. And if you think of, I always say, if you think of your gut lining as kind of like a really tightly knitted blanket. And so when we start to have leaky gut, if you think of a blanket that you've had for a long time and those stitches start to get loose and come apart, that's what happens in our gut. And then instead of the food being, it should be broken down into a liquid form and then absorbed, what happens is particles of our food start to get absorbed into our bloodstream. And that's what causes this inflammation, because the body sees those particles of food coming in as invaders and causes this inflammation. And the way that inflammation affects us, so if you ever have a cut, it goes kind of red and inflamed and then it heals. And when we have this internal inflammation, we have that same kind of redness, but it never goes away until we start to resolve our gut issues and start to heal that lining of the gut wall. And that inflammation has a knock-on effect. And whilst I always say our genes are, and I think this was something that Bruce Lipton said, is your genes are your gun and the environment is the trigger. So your genes can determine some things, and sometimes that can be the illness that you end up with, whether that's arthritis, whether you start to struggle with menopause issues, whether you develop some sort of autoimmune condition. Sometimes that is our genes, and then our environment is the trigger. And I always think the environment is your gut health and what's happening in, and it's not only the food you eat. Obviously, we're looking at your lifestyle, your stress, your relationships, how all of those work, your community, everything. So it's not just working on your food and your gut health specifically, because stress can have an impact on our gut. We all know when you have stress and anxiety, you have that churning feeling in your gut, and that's because of the communication that happens between the gut and the brain. So it's working on the foundations of everything and working out what's going on in your life and what you can change, not just literally your diet. It's got to be everything.
So with all that you've said, there's so much there. What sort of tips would you say? What are your top 5 or 10 tips that people can actually look at and take action upon straight away?
Okay, perfect. So starting today, depending on where you are in the world, whether it's your morning, your lunchtime, or your evening. So the best things to do is first thing in the morning when you wake up, one of the best things to do is to have some warm water with freshly squeezed lemon. And that's not hot water. Make sure it's warm water, and it needs to be freshly squeezed lemon, because you're getting the nutrients and the minerals from the lemon. And what that helps you to do is overnight our bodies are healing and repairing and regenerating. So first thing in the morning, we need to have that water that can help us to flush out any toxins that our body has released, because part of that process of healing is your body helping your body to get rid of toxins. So it's rehydrating your body, and you're getting the vitamin C and the minerals from the lemon to help your body to rehydrate and to start your day off on a good note. So I think everybody can do that. And even if you can't have the fresh lemon for any reason, then just having some warm water is a good way to start the day. Another tip is
Can I just
protein.
ask you on that one? Is
Yes.
there a difference between having the hot water, the warm water with lemon, instead of or as well as apple cider vinegar?
Yeah, so apple cider vinegar is a really great one. And I think you can add in, when you're doing your warm water, you can add in apple cider vinegar, you can do cinnamon, you can add some spices in as well, and just, make it kind of that really healthy concoction in the morning. The one thing with apple cider vinegar is I would always say is make sure that you get the organic one that's got kind of the floaty bits in it. I know it doesn't look so great when you buy it, but those floaty bits are what is prebiotics that we need that really help with our gut health. Yeah, so apple cider vinegar is a great one. And then just remembering that it does need to be drunk with water and not on its own, because on its own, it will obviously create problems in your digestive tract if you just drink apple cider vinegar on its
So
own.
you do the apple cider plus the lemon juice together in the warm water, or
Yeah,
separate?
so you can do it together, or you can do it separate. What I like to do, I think, is for most of my clients that I work with, when they come to me, they generally are kind of at the end of their tether, and they're stressed and they're overwhelmed. So I like people just to think of one simple thing,
Okay.
if that makes sense. So
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
you can add all of those things in, but actually just do the one thing of adding the the lemon juice to the water, because once you start to think, oh, I've got to add this in and that in, and I've got to have that and I've got to have that, then people feel a little bit stressed and overwhelmed. So yes,
Yes.
absolutely, you can do that, but just as a starting point, if that makes sense.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Yes.
yeah.
Number 2.
So number 2 would be to get really good protein for your first meal of the day. And so we're talking about good quality, depending on whether you vegan or vegetarian or meat eating, is just getting really good quality protein. And for vegans and vegetarians, is making sure that that's not processed and packaged protein, that's really good sources like quinoa, chia seeds, and just starting your day with that protein. Often I find most people are having cereals, which they've been promoted to as being the really healthy way to start the day. But basically, all you're doing is taking on board quite a lot of sugar, because that cereal breaks down into your body very quickly into sugar. So by having protein, it helps to keep you fuller for longer. The amino acids in the protein help with our gut health, with our hormones. So that has a big impact then on how you're starting off your day, and you're not having that crash around 10 o'clock where most people reach for a coffee and a biscuit. Yeah, so that's my tip number 2. And then number 3 is to look at kind of your diet through the whole week and look at getting 30 different vegetables and fruits in your diet during the week. And although initially that seems quite challenging, is that don't forget that herbs and spices count in that variety of 30 different fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices. And probably most people would be very happy to know that chocolate, so dark chocolate, does count as one of your 30.
I love that.
So it's just, and looking at the, the colors and the colors of the rainbow, of getting in like the reds from the tomatoes and the greens from the green leafy vegetables, and look at those rainbows of colors, reds from cherries, tomatoes, those kinds of things. So it's looking at your variety and your colors and what you can add in, and the herbs and spices, where you can add it in. And so if you think about a breakfast, if the 30 seems overwhelming, if you take your breakfast and you had some organic oats porridge, you added some chia seeds in, you added some cinnamon into that, you added some nuts, some pumpkin seeds, some ground flax seeds, already you've got 6 different varieties that you're adding just into that one meal. So it becomes very easy to get that variety over the week. So those are just some, simple tips that I think people can take away and just start working on and get started right away. The other thing is, although we talk about water intake, obviously in the morning, is your water intake throughout the day. So obviously everyone is different and everyone has different activity levels, and that will depend on your water intake. But as a general rule, most people should be having about 2 liters of water a day. And that's clean, fresh water. That's not part of your cup of tea or your cup of coffee or anything else that you're drinking. It should be 2 liters of clean, pure water. And I recommend that most people filter their water and look for a good quality filter that doesn't just take the toxins out, but adds some minerals back into the water as well, because a lot of the filters unfortunately strip everything out, and then you've got no minerals, and your water should have minerals in it. So looking for a really good filter that will take out, as I say, the rubbish and put the good stuff back in, and then using that to filter your water throughout the day. And there's loads of filters available. And, nowadays you can even buy bottles that filter your water for you as well. And it doesn't have to be expensive. So
I must say, I've been using filtered water for 20 years already.
Yes.
And the Korean water technology is fantastic. So I'm really happy with that. But as you say, there's just so many.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, and it's being aware. Obviously, the one thing that I do try and get people to avoid is drinking out of plastic bottles. And the reason for that is that the plastic bottles have a lining in them. And I know that people are going, oh, this is BPA free. But the thing that concerns me is, yes, they've taken the BPA out, but what have they put in its place? Because the BPA is what gives the bottle structure. So those toxins are leaching into the water. And even if you live in a country like the UK, obviously in Australia, you're aware that it's hot and those bottles of water could be sitting in the sun. And the sun is what then starts to melt those toxins. And you may sit in the UK or somewhere, that's colder in the States or Canada or wherever you are and think, oh, but I'm in a cold country, it doesn't matter. But please remember that you don't know where that water has been bottled and where it's come from and where it's sat to get to you. So it's just being aware of that. So I always discourage people from drinking bottled water. If you have no option, then obviously it's going to be better than nothing, but rather use glass bottles. And if you're filtering your water, use glass bottles or aluminium, stainless steel bottles to have your water in. So that's just another small tip that people can, start working towards as well.
Absolutely awesome. Now, I would love you to share with our listeners, because I said to you, is there something special, a takeaway where our listeners can firstly connect with you, and where do they find this fabulous offer that you're going to share with them?
Okay, so I know you're going to put in all the details below for the podcast, so everyone will, to reach out. The places that I do hang out the most, I have to be honest, are LinkedIn and Instagram. So that's where anyone can reach out to me. And the special offer I had, I call it my 7-day Radiant Renewal Program. What that is, so we were talking a little bit earlier about neural pathways and rewiring your brain. And I think for a long time, we were led to believe that once your brain formed, that was your brain. And I don't know about you, but I think in my mid-30s, when I realized that I could actually change my thoughts and I could take control of those thoughts. And I always say that was the most irritating and the most exciting day of my life, because it's like, why haven't I known this up until now? And then it was kind of, yay, I know this. I can choose how I think and feel. And I think it is important to know that in every single moment, we are thinking, feeling, and choosing, thinking, feeling, and choosing. And we can change how we think, so we can change our thoughts. And so the idea is that when we create those neural pathways, if you think of going into a forest, there's always a path that's already there. And often it's easier to follow that path. It feels safe. It's already there. But because of the way that we've developed from our ancestors, is often that path is a negative pathway. So we're very prone to 50 people can say something really nice to you, and one person says something really awful, and you focus on that really awful thing. And so that's that easy pathway in the forest. So it's about creating a new pathway and getting new neural networks. And we do that by being consistent. And it's what I call micropractices. So again, I said most people I see are stressed and overwhelmed. And to give them, to say you need to go away and meditate for an hour, most people are not going to do that. It would be lovely if they could, but most people won't. So it's a short 10-day practice of less than 10 minutes a day of just helping you get into that process of building those new neural networks, understanding how small practices such as gratitude can help, just giving you the tips and resources that you can plug into those places of peace and calm that we already have inside of us, but often we don't access them because we get into the state of stress and overwhelm. And then we kind of are spiraling down that easy pathway of, oh, I'm so busy, I'm so stressed, I'm so overwhelmed. And this is just teaching people to actually take that moment, take a step back, take a breath, come into the present, and decide to choose how you wish to feel and how you want your day to go. So the link of that you'll share below, or if anyone reaches out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram, then I can share the link with them and direct them to that page where they can sign up. It's a free 10-day challenge that you can take part of. And I promise you it'll be life-changing.
Wow, that is so awesome. So tell me, Kerry, is that on your website, or should they connect with you on LinkedIn or the other social media?
If they connect with me on LinkedIn or other social media, on my website is literally would be a link to book a strategy call with me. So that's not on my website.
Right. So
yes,
for that special offer, they need to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yes.
Well, I must say, if there's one last thing you'd like to share with our listeners who are excited to learn more and even do that beautiful step towards you on that 7-day journey, what would you say to them?
I think that's my one takeaway is it. You are the director, you are the CEO of your health. And yes, you can see somebody else, it doesn't matter which method you choose, but no one will be more concerned about your health than you ever will. You have to live with yourself. You have to live with your health. And it is one of the reasons why I wrote my book. If you believe you can heal yourself, you can, because I truly believe that if you believe there is a way, you will find it. If you don't believe there is anything you can do, you will never look for something different. But I honestly believe our bodies heal and regenerate. We have this most amazing thing you will ever own. And our bodies are designed to be well. You just need to give it the opportunity to do that. So that would be my message, is have hope, remember you're in charge, and find the things that resonate and work for you. And that will make a difference, and that will change your health and change your life going forwards.
Kerry, thank you. That is so in line with what I believe. Take charge of your health naturally. And just by following some of those steps you've given us, and with that background, I really appreciate you being our guest on this Take Charge of Your Health Naturally podcast. Thank you so much, Kerry.
Thank you so much for having me.